asked myself how much editing was in the project, and at some point I said no, it can be edited because it seems to be so fluent. So they were a bit prepared, I guess, before. But
some people had it written out.
But there's this quality to this work that you ask yourself the question: is it how far it is made up? And it seems to me that from the answers you give, that it is very evident to anyone that they have this skill and they don't have to think much about it. And people around know their skills too, and they know that this one she's very good at doing this, you know. And so it's very cold, it's in your face when you start reading your stuff, and this question is very quite natural to ask, but I don't want to give you some advice. You know more your work than I would ever do, but that's a very interesting thing because it pops in the mind of the seer. So
and I think it's an issue with any work that any of us do, because one of our aims is like sort of having a sort of a level playing field, which is an illusion, but we still have the control with editing. And so, say with other projects, we're ultimately the editor, and in this case we wanted to minimize that. So to respect that they had come prepared and this is what they wanted to say, that they said it.
This is a great statement. I think it's very important.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we're still evolving. So each project you do, you learn something from it. So in this, the other thing that mattered to us was that it wasn't them just in front of the camera, it was one of us always. So that our awkwardness was present. Sometimes like things I didn't get, so I'd have to ask. You know, and that was important that I was out of my depth. There was some moments that I was like, you know, or I'm sitting there.
We debated about keeping one of those moments in, and we decided to keep it in, even though it does not make Linda look the greatest. But we wanted to keep that in.
But for the viewer, it's very helpful to see that you're struggling at some point, because we do struggle at some point.
Yeah, I think that's very important.
Yeah, and so we consciously, which we hadn't done, well, we hadn't worked before together, but that one of us was always in front of the camera, so that it wasn't about, it was about us. And that's sort of shifting the hierarchy. Or trying to. You know, like there's, you sort of try to do these things, but then you also think, yeah, there's still gaps that you have to acknowledge.
Est-ce que vous avez, comment dire, le mot est pas juste, mais est-ce que vous avez atteint votre objectif? Did you?
Our goal. I don't know if we had a goal when we started, other than to produce a show.
Well, I think
if that was in the goal, I don't know.
But it depends what you mean by goal. Like we were conscious that we wanted to reverse the hierarchy right from the beginning, and that grew out of probably both our experiences with social service agencies.
That would be like your team, to reverse the hierarchy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think both of us have experience with social services in different ways, and both of us have felt troubled by our experiences with social services, and wanted to change the hierarchy that was happening, and we wanted to be a cog in changing the hierarchy.
And making it visible. So right from the beginning, we said that. Like I'd say we said that before we figured out how we'd do it. And we wanted to, like, we also wanted to change the view of, like, the invisibility of people who are on the street. That in fact, that's saying that they are people to be valued. So that was early on. We had that as a goal, and then work towards the specifics. And there was a process of working with the staff to think through, you know. The other thing is we shot it at the center because they felt strongly that if you're going to do something like that, you do it where they are safe, and felt safe. So back to the way they talked was probably because it was a position of safety.
We were definitely interlopers.
I understand, but I was wondering that in that center they are like in security bubble regarding their job engagement for me. It means, but they are they independent or they work for PIM? It's
That was not
We
our
never
question.
asked them that
Yeah.
No.
And we wouldn't.
But it's a reality. So.
It is if that's
But
what they
because
wanted.
I asked that because we compare their job to another job that we say it's normal, and there's a big difference there. And also what they sell is their soul.
But first of all, like the
It's their body and
are
their soul.
the 10 women, they're not all sex workers.
And why do
And-
you choose those workers?
Well, they're not all sex workers that we talked to. We didn't ask sex workers to come talk to us. The project I did with sex workers is completely different than this project.
Okay.
So the 10 women, I don't want anyone to think the 10 women we talked to were all sex workers, because they weren't.
And we didn't
They
define
won't work
them.
anymore.
Sorry?
They don't work anymore.
No, some of them never did sex work.
There's a
And those-
fluidity in
okay.
terms of what happens on the
Okay.
street, and I think that's the other thing. I think it's a quick label,
It was not clear
But-
for me.
Yeah.
but they're not necessarily, and sometimes they make choices, or they, do something now and they do something later. So I have a lot of difficulty with the labels because they're seen as this, as opposed to being
Okay.
women who 10 women. So
Okay.
you and then you, okay?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you, in that sense of, reversing the hierarchy structure and the power structures, if you would see your work as political in that sense.
I think I'm a political person, and I make political work.
And ethical. You want it to be ethical, and for it to be, you have to consider, all of these factors. And we keep learning. But yeah, and I think there's an politics embedded in it automatically. Partly because
It's
of
more socio-political than just political.
depends on what
I mean, people want to call this a socially engaged practice, and I'm happy calling this practice a socially engaged practice. And I'm happy that if political means that I'm pushing a political motivation that I have within my work, and a political motivation that I have is for us to agree and enlarge our sense of community, to bring in everybody under the same branches and talk to everybody. I think that's what the work is doing. That's what I'm
Avoid
trying to do.
exclusion.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. Like the mayor.
I'm happy. I'm not happy he's our mayor, but I have no problem with him smoking crack. I have other problems with him.
Yeah, serious problems.
I was wondering when you were saying that some of the motivations for this project arise from your previous work with community center or social
Services.
thank you, and that you had issues with the experience you had brought issues, and I was wondering in terms of that particular center that was implied in this project, did you feel there was a need to reverse the hierarchy there particularly, and if so, do you have the impression that your project was an effective gesture in that sense?
Okay. I'll probably answer that because I have a long history with them, and I think I have such respect. Like they are asking all the same questions that we're asking,
Okay.
and I would sort of definitely respect where they're coming from. So within the centers, you've got people coming forward to sort of teach them art. So there's factors that affect them. This is actually the United Church that runs this particular one, which is why politically they're able to be more trans friendly, but they also, they are still a center that's dependent on a lot of people coming forward to provide lessons. So they had they do computer skills, which is good, but they have to be there to use the computers, and none of them have computers. So, so they decided that was valid. The writing is turned to be crucial because that's a means for them. And so they also assess as they're going on. So I don't think it was a judgment as much as an awareness. And it was actually, it really started for me was one of the women was saying that she was going to a banking class, to a banking meeting. So I thought, being artists, that it was so they would decide together how they'd spend the money in terms of activities in the center. And so I said, oh, that's really nice that they're bringing everybody in to discuss. And then she was like, no, it was to teach them banking skills, but they can't have bank accounts. And that was when, there's gaps. And like in anything that a center does, they try things and some are better than others. And sometimes it depends on who's doing it. So it wasn't a specific judgment. In fact, I think of the centers, that's the one that I felt most comfortable working with, besides that it's across the road. But I do respect. And I knew that we could go there and they would take it seriously and challenge us if there was something that was way off.
That's good.
Yeah.
It seems for me that in your works, fiction is very present.
Fiction?
Fiction. And in this work, there's no fiction. Or
maybe. I mean, we have no idea if they're telling us. I mean, we're putting our trust in them that they are telling us the truth. But I mean, fiction. I think fiction and nonfiction are way too easy to sort of talk about. I mean, in the other works I've done, they sort of meld back and forth as well between fiction and nonfiction. I mean, the 100 Stories about my grandmother. All the people I talked to, I found advertising sex. So I knew they at least have that step. But what they told me, do I know if it's true or not? I have no idea. Just as this as well.
But also, there's an interesting part to that question in that all of us have different ways to present ourselves. And we've both done works. I think that was awesome. Before that, like, I did one where I hired a polygraph tester, like an RCMP, to test people, because I was interested in how we could reinvent ourselves. And so one woman confessed to something that I had made up. So there is this thing about, in all of this, is how we present ourselves, how do we fictionalize ourselves, and how much does that matter? Because I think
it's about storytelling.
Yeah, that's probably the key component. And maybe people coming here questioned the content of it. I have a sense that, like, you didn't, that you believed it.
What they were saying?
Yeah.
No, well, actually, it's hard not to believe that when you have someone in front of the camera saying, well, one day I'm Cuban, the other day I'm Caribbean, then you realize that actually appearance is the whole thing. So you're bound to believe it because that's the information you're given.
And
so you can refuse all that into appearance, but then you're stuck with how it is. Being is what it is, and what being is what it is, not what it is. So
That's probably what
be interesting if you walked out and said we fooled them all.
Going to drive back to Toronto today going,
But that's why we're not sociologists, because I think a sociologist would want to check, and that's not our issue at all.
Yeah, we didn't check.
No, we didn't, like, it was
didn't care
about,
to check.
yeah.